Hey everybody, Remington here, Hub City Home Inspection, and we're back today. We're going to discuss electrical systems, okay? And this is by no means an in-depth overview of how electrical systems work or all the ins and outs. I do not claim to be an electrician. Uh, Electrical is very tricky, and it's definitely something you want a knowledgeable person working on for you. As a home inspector, we definitely have guidelines and knowledge of things that need to be inspected, but I'm not expected to or claim to be capable of wiring a home or knowing all the ins and outs of an electrical system. And so there are times where you're going to see, just like in every other category, hey, recommend a licensed electrician take a look at this or evaluate this, inspect it, get their opinion on it, and verify what I'm claiming I believe is incorrect or I'm unsure about and needs verification by someone with more knowledge than I have in the subject or on the subject. So we'll talk about first our service entrance and our panels, our electrical cabinets. So starting from the outside going in, if our wires are coming, main power wires for overhead from a telephone pole to the home, we're going to see, hey, is there enough space, enough clearance between the wires and the ground, the literal ground we're standing on. Newer houses, usually not a problem. These old houses, Tech Terrace, Heart of Lubbock, some of the Melanie Park houses, they are going to have the electrical mast that is too low. The real old ones will have the mast sits under the fascian soffit, under the eave there, and that's almost certain it's going to be too low. And it's just an age of home thing, okay? Next, we're looking, when that line comes in, it forms a loop, or it's supposed to form a loop, and it should have the connections at the top of the loop up here, because whenever water hits it and runs down, we want it to run down to wiring and not to connections. The connections are up here. That way we get the little ponding of water, not where our connections are. Lots of times we'll see that either put in incorrectly or it's just so old that it's slowly spread out and now that connection is at the bottom and it says, hey, service loop is basically, it's not a loop anymore, or the connections are at the wrong position. So very common in older houses. Where the mast comes out of the meter box or the panel, the cabinet itself, and penetrates through the soffit and the roof line, we want to make sure that's sealed up well for water penetration purposes, as well as bugs and critters getting in there depending on how large the opening is. And so then we go to our electrical cabinets. Oftentimes we have at least two cabinets, a main disconnect, and then a sub panel or a sub cabinet somewhere else. Not always, but it's pretty common here. And so I will take photos of the cabinet, open the door, take photos, then take the cover off as long as I deem it safe, and then look at how that's wired. Just looking for anything that's considered incorrect, anything that looks a little odd or incorrect. This is one of those instances where, hey, some of these really old panels are very cluttered and it's hard to see what all is going on in them. And sometimes you need somebody with more expertise to understand how some of these old cabinets were wired or jumbled together. Looking for bonding and grounding. Do we have a ground rod or a UFER somewhere? So all of our electricity is running to that ground and dispersing any erratic electrical issues to the earth. And do we have that in place? Yes or no? Older houses, like old houses, don't commonly have them unless the system has been upgraded, and then they'll have one there. We don't see a lot of UFERs here. That's something that is instead of going to the ground rod, it goes into rebar into the foundation system, and those are usually seen in a garage, at least commonly where I've seen them. But that's just not common here. We see our grounding, and then we see our neutrals and our grounds bonded together in the cabinet, and then we're making sure that all of our breakers, do the wire sizes match the breaker size? And sometimes that's fairly easy to determine. Sometimes it's a little more challenging. It can depend. Hey, can we see the labels? Can we see the sheathing on the wire set that's coming in? That will tell us, depending on the color coding on that, it may tell us what size is coming in as well. And then we can look up and see, yeah, that's the right size wire for that breaker, or no, it's oversized, it's undersized. And we need those to be correct. That way one part of the system doesn't have issues and the other part is doing just fine, and we may not trip properly, wires may overheat, may not deliver the amount of power that we need to that device or appliance. And so it's very important that the proper wire size is used in the panel, in the whole system, everywhere. Something that we see that's very common is in our electrical cabinets is double tapped breakers. And it just depends on who you talk to of whether that's a big deal or not. On my end, I'm not determining if something's a big deal or not. I'm considering, is it considered right or is it considered incorrect? Double tapped breakers are incorrect. There are breakers that are designed to have multiple wires in them, and it may say 2 for copper, 1 for aluminum, or vice versa. But most of the time when we see it, it's 2 wires stuck under one lug or in one breaker that isn't intended to have 2 wires. The idea is those wire sizes may be slightly different sizes or noticeably different sizes, and it may not push down or clamp onto that wire, those 2 wires, evenly, which means one of them might be a little bit loose. It may simply come out and you don't have power now to that branch circuit wherever it was going, or it may be just a little loose and it can wiggle and it can spark or arc and cause us issues like that and just not make good contact, and that can cause us issues. It's very common, like I said. Most people will just say, looks like it's doing fine, it's been there, you can tell. I'm just not concerned with it, it's doing its job. But it is considered incorrect. That's on breakers and lugs, all the same. They're all designed, if they're designed for 1 wire, there should only be 1 wire under them. So, and the older we get in our houses, the more double taps we'll see, because they need to add a circuit, they want to add a fixture, they want to add something, but the cabinet is not large enough, or maybe they just got lazy and didn't want to buy a breaker, but for whatever reason, they just stick another wire in and then move on. So another thing that you'll see extremely common to be called out is we have what we call bus bars, and these hold our neutral wires and they hold our ground wires. And so ideally these have little lugs in them as well. You loosen a screw, stick a wire in, tighten the screw back on it. Next one, loosen it, stick a wire in, tighten it down, and it holds it in place. 1 wire per screw. Again, usually they double those up. A lot of times they'll have 2 or 3 under each one. Sometimes they will combine their grounds and their neutrals. So this breaker, this system or branch circuit has a ground and a neutral. Well, let's put them together, and so we have those there together. Then the next ones, we'll put them together and have those there together. But it's still supposed to be 1 wire per screw. And so it's considered incorrect. Does not always mean it's a big deal. And a lot of times it's an age of home deal. It's, hey, that's how they wired them in this time frame. And so we just keep that stuff in mind. We're looking for, hey, what kind of wiring is our branch circuits? Our branch circuits, I mean our outlets, all the wiring running through our home. Majority of the time it's copper. Occasionally we'll see some nickel coated copper on certain breakers, and then on some of the larger capacity appliances we'll see aluminum sometimes, and like an old stove or an old house where the stove may have aluminum wiring. Now copper's great. The problem with aluminum wiring is it expands and contracts much more than copper does, and so we can run into issues with that expansion and contraction and it wearing and not over time not making good contact at the outlet or the device that it's running to. And poor contact, kind of like the double tap breakers, poor contact can lead to arcing, or it can lead to a spark. It can lead to things just having some movement and making contact, not making contact. And then that's when we run into issues. And aluminum wiring, that's the bad thing about it. And if we go to where they're connecting that aluminum wire or splicing it together, and we have wire nuts that are threaded on there to hold that together, it is acceptable, but it has to be done with a particular wire nut. So they make a purple wire nut that's designed for aluminum, and it is designed to work with the way aluminum works as far as the expansion and contraction. And so you see an aluminum wire, but you don't see a purple wire nut. It's considered incorrect. That wire nut was not intended for that type of a joint. So those are things that we're looking for. We don't see a whole lot of aluminum wiring around here, other than maybe those big appliances every now and then on older houses, but we're pretty good about having copper wire around here in West Texas. When we go to a sub panel, this is something that's very common, especially as we get a little bit older in houses, that you'll see a note on. So all those notes I just talked about are the same in main panels and sub panels. Something that is different for just sub panels is we go back to those bus bars that have neutrals and grounds on them. And a sub panel, our neutrals and our grounds should be separated. And it's like I said, it's very common for those to still be combined in older homes. But we want those separated, and not only just separated, but we want the neutrals to be off of the cabinet. We don't want them bonded or touching the metal cabinet, but we do want our grounds touching or being bonded to the metal cabinet. That can be done with a bonding screw that threads through the end of the bus bar and touches the metal, or it can be done with a strap that is stuck into one of the screws on the bus bar, and then it goes down and they fasten it to the cabinet, usually with a green screw. So neutrals separate from the cabinet, grounds bonded to the cabinet in a sub panel. Very common, pretty common note. It is considered a safety issue, and if you have questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them the best that I can. Something else that we'll see and gets noted quite a bit is multiple breaker brands in a cabinet. And so the idea is the panel needs to be filled with breakers that match the cabinet. Sometimes we'll see various brands in there from being replaced over the years. And while some breaker brands are interchangeable, I don't get into those specifics. I don't keep up with that. I simply say, hey, this cabinet is a Square D, and it has a different brand in there, maybe one, maybe multiple ones. So it's also a fairly common note that we'll see. Some people say it's not a big deal. Some say, hey, they don't make good contact like they should. That's, of course, one of those things. Client can do their research and decide what they think about that as well. So that's going over entrance panels, service entrance, and the panels, cabinets. There's a few more things we can discuss about branch circuits. We'll do that here. This video, of course, is going to be a little longer than some of the others, but there's usually a lot of deficiencies. Electrical is probably the category that has the most deficiencies in it. So as we'll move into like the home now. So we've been looking at panels, now we're in the house. Things that we're going to be looking for. I'm going to go through and test at least one plug on all the outlets that I can access. Let's see if my tester tells me we have proper wiring. Occasionally there will be times where I may pull a cover off and try and shine my light in there and look and see if I can see missing a wire, see if I can see that something's not wire nutted together properly, or if they have a ground jumper where it makes my tester think that our outlet's grounded, but it's really not. And so we have our prongs that we're used to seeing. They're the 3-prong outlets that we're all familiar with. These 3-prong outlets may not actually be grounded. That bottom prong may not have a wire that goes to it. And a 2-wire, this will be noted as a 2-wire system, and the idea behind this is it's deceiving. And we don't think about it like this, but when we go to plug something in, that outlet tells us, hey, this is grounded, I'm good, when in reality it isn't grounded. Now, if it was like the old 2-prong outlets, then it's not deceiving. It says, hey, this is 2 prongs, only 2 prongs fit, there is no ground, there's nothing for me to think about. It just fits, and it is what I think that it is when I look at it. So that's a very common note in older houses when we've gone through and updated all of our outlets around the home. So another very common thing that we look for, or what you'll see noted in your reports under the electrical branch circuits, connected devices section, is going to be smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. We want to see a smoke detector in each bedroom. We want to see a smoke detector in the hallway outside of the bedrooms, or maybe not a hallway, but just directly outside of each bedroom. If it is a hallway and they're all connected right there, usually we can have 1 smoke detector in there, but sometimes we'll need multiple depending on how that's laid out. We need a smoke detector in the common areas. So this would be like a living room, or if you have multiple living rooms or a living room and a den, it would be those common areas. We need a smoke detector in each one of those. And then carbon monoxide detectors should be directly outside all bedrooms as well. Usually you get the combo, smoke carbon combo detectors, and put those in the hallways or outside the bedrooms. And then a carbon monoxide detector inside the garage entry. So when you come from your garage into your home, there's a carbon monoxide detector there, because we have fumes, we have exhausts, we have things that put carbon monoxide into our home from there if we're not careful. These are carbon monoxides only required on houses that have natural gas appliances or that have an attached garage. So if you're all electric and you have a detached garage or no garage, then you don't have to have carbon monoxide detectors in your home according to building standards. Around something you'll see in older homes, around all countertops that have water, so bathroom vanities, kitchen countertops, laundry room vanities, or countertops that have sinks with them, is we need GFCI outlets or breakers. So, and those are the ones that have the outlets are the ones with a little button on them you can push and reset. Sometimes they're red and black, sometimes they're not, but you can click the button, it trips or clicks, and then you push it to reset it. And we want to make sure in a kitchen, all kitchen countertop outlets have to be on a GFCI. If you're not familiar with it, that doesn't mean every outlet has to have a GFCI style outlet. It means it has to be connected to one that is a GFCI. So we put our first one on a GFCI, everything downstream on that branch is connected to that or protected by that GFCI. And sometimes those are breakers out in the panel. Sometimes they're the actual receptacles that have the push buttons on them. Either way is fine. The other thing we want to see, modern standards want to see, is AFCI breakers. I have seen these in outlets, but only once or twice. Usually they're an AFCI breaker, and it's the breakers with the little buttons on them, kind of like the GFCI outlet. And these are supposed to be in all common areas. Basically, everywhere that doesn't have water that needs a GFCI now should have an AFCI. If you read on these, you'll get a lot of back and forth data. Lots of people don't like them. They're kind of finicky. They will trip for no reason, it seems like sometimes, but they are required by modern standards. So let's see here, tamper-resistant outlets. So the outlets that, when you look into the 2 prongs, you will see it's either clear or black, these little inserts in them. Tamper-resistant, child-resistant outlets. You've tried to plug something in and you can't get the plug to go in, it's those. Those are required everywhere now in a house. And so we have an older home, maybe even just 10, 15 years old. It's probably going to be a note, hey, it doesn't have tamper-resistant outlets, or it doesn't have them everywhere. So very common note to have. And going back, to the GFCIs, those are expected in garages as well as exterior outlets also. We're looking for our outlets on the outside of the house to be in a weather-resistant box or covers, lids, something of that nature that protects them from the weather. That is, something very common in older houses that we'll see it in new houses sometimes too, but in older houses is extremely common, is all of our connections for our wiring need to be in a junction box. So sometimes we'll see them where they just spliced them together, wire nuts and electrical tape. It's considered incorrect. We'll see them in a box, spliced together, electrical tape with no cover on it. Needs a cover on it. Needs to be concealed in a box so that in the instance we have an electrical issue in that box, we hope that it stays contained to that box and it doesn't get out. Because a lot of times these are in our attics or they're in a wall, they're under a cabinet, and we don't want a fire to be able to happen there. We want them contained and to hopefully stay in that box. The other thing is older houses usually, most of our junction boxes in our newer homes are plastic, but older junction boxes in residential settings were metal, or a lot of them were metal. And any time, and this goes for a garbage disposal, a furnace, an electrical cabinet, or a junction box, anytime a wire passes through a metal housing, there needs to be something protecting that wire from the metal's edge. It can be a rubber grommet, it can be a wire clamp, some bushing of some form, but we don't want wire resting against the metal. And so very common garbage disposals, lots of times they won't have their clamp in place, and we'll have electrical cabinets where they've ran wires through to go into the breakers and they didn't put bushings or clamps up there either. So it's a pretty common note that we'll see quite often as well. Like I said, electrical is usually the biggest deficiency category that I see, with the most items listed, especially the older houses we get. But if there's any questions on any of that stuff, please give me a call, ask any questions, okay? Just don't be too alarmed if you see an electrical section that's pretty long. Another thing, last thing here probably that I'll think of right now is Federal Pacific panels. So Federal Pacific panels, they are considered a safety hazard, and it's, for the most part, I think it's pretty much known across the board that if you have a Federal Pacific electrical panel or cabinet, it is recommended to have it replaced. However you guys discuss, negotiate, go about that is up to you, of course, but my note, and pretty much every inspector's note, is going to say Federal Pacific cabinet, recommended to replace. This is considered a safety hazard. They're known to have issues. They're known to not trip properly, maybe get excessively hot. They just don't function like they're supposed to function. Obviously, if we're still looking at them, lots of them are in houses from the 40s or 50s and 60s, and newer, 70s, 80s. They can be in much newer houses, but I don't remember when they started exactly. Maybe it's 60s. But they're considered a safety issue, and it's just recommended to replace them. I think that's about, there's always stuff in electrical, there just is, but I think that's about it. If you have questions, let me know. Give me a call, 806-786-6444. Thanks.